Greetings. I'm back, Basil Manuel, the Executive Director of Daptosa, and we are back talking about the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act, Act 32 of 2024. This is our our third installment. We've done the first installment, which focused on compulsory schooling, which focused on the whole issue around those two clauses, the admission and the language clauses, and the time given to have more comment. And then we've also looked at that section which made schooling compulsory and how compulsory schooling has an impact on some of the other things we do. So that was in section one. As we moved to the second video, just to recap, we looked at some of the critical amendments to SASA regarding the code of conduct, and particularly disciplinary procedures and the prohibition of corporal punishment and initiation practices. Of course, we can't condone corporal punishment. It's an era long gone. We can't condone anything that harms children. And of course, with the expanded definition of corporal punishment, it does say to our teachers, we've got to be a little more careful about and think about the things we say or do, and think about what they make children feel like or feel about themselves. So disciplinary procedures are about fairness, and they must be age appropriate. Now, the BELA Act also makes provision for action to be taken for serious misconduct, which after a hearing, children can be suspended, but also for those parts of serious misconduct where a charge has been laid by the police already. And so there can be an immediate suspension of a child. So these are some of the things that we have done already. Now, today, we are going to focus on one or two other sections, and this will bring to an end our debate, our talk rather, on on the BELA Act. And also, hopefully, we have demystified some of the things that have been said. Nowhere in the bill did you find anything about abortion and teachers being given the right to take children for abortion. Absolute nonsense. Nowhere did you find that the BELA bill is about changing the various laws or the various regulations that have to do with the curriculum. The BELA has got nothing to do with the curriculum. Curriculum is a process, and we as education unions are part of that process. Nowhere does it say that the BELA will allow sex education or sexuality education to be taught. We even had a politician who should have known better saying if the BELA is passed, it will be akin to passing pornography. I don't know what he was reading, but there's no such thing in the BELA Act. We even heard that the BELA Act will stop home education, homeschooling. Not true. It has introduced regulations and quality controls. And to try and ensure, as Lauren Hill had said, to stop the miseducation of children, which was happening in some instances. But now to move on to today's section. Today I'm going to talk more about the governing body and more about some of the changes there and how it impacts on schools. For one, the Section 21 of SASA will be amended so that the head of department can centrally procure learning and teaching materials. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we have raised this issue as a red flag because we don't believe that it is necessarily always correct. But because we commented on it, there has been an escape clause that has been built in. The governing body can also procure from a supplier if it proves to be more cost effective, but they must provide evidence. Because we know, as a former head, where the department was saying we can provide pencils at 20 Rand each, and we could buy pencils for 5 Rand, and so on. So that is important. But it also creates an amendment so that the governing body can co-opt members onto the governing body, parts of the community, people who don't necessarily have children at the school, but it's external experts. Now, here's the term expert. It is not about packing the governing body with friends and so on. It is about external experts with relevant expertise to support the functions of the governing body. This change also allows the governing body to build its own capacity so that it could assist with the running of the school. Remember, the governance of the school lies purely in the hands of the governing body. But now, here are a couple of things that the governing body should remember. First of all, this is about conflict of interest. Number one, if an issue is being discussed in which you have an interest or could gain a favor, or a member of your family, or a good friend, you have to recuse yourself. And here we are talking about recruitment, employment, procurement. Governing bodies are often accused of providing jobs for friends and family and being bought and sold. We must never cheapen what is a very, very good institution by falling into that trap. Recusal from meetings, if something is being discussed that you know you cannot be objective in, you must recuse yourself. And of course, you remain excused from the meetings until a decision is made. However, if you don't comply with these rules, you can be removed as a member of the governing body. It applies to the committees as well. And the whole issue of family membership is being more defined. Parents, siblings, children, spouse, life partners, relatives permanently living with a member or other family members. We know that it's an endless list. Then, of course, there was this issue of remuneration, this constant need of people to want to be paid for doing their civic duty. The amendment clarifies that members of the school governing body are not allowed any form of remuneration, no salaries, no stipends, no allowances for carrying out your responsibilities. It's an honorary task. It's a task you do because you are vested in your child's education. This restriction applies not only to attending meetings, but also to any school-related activities. You can't say, I've come to the prize giving. I need to be rewarded for it. You cannot be. The intention is to ensure that members serve the school as volunteers and not because they can gain anything financially out of it. Then about the position of chairperson and finance committee chair. The amendments to Section 29 of SASA make it clear that the chairperson of the school governing body must be a parent at the school, but you can't be employed at the school. So a teacher who has a child at the school, or one of our ESP workers, our education support personnel, who has a child at the school, they can't become the chairperson of the governing body. That is not allowed. Additionally, the amendment stipulates that the finance committee must also be chaired by a parent who is not employed at the school. It can't be the teacher rep, for example. Cannot be. Neither can the teacher rep be the chairperson of the governing body. And this provision aims to ensure that financial oversight is handled by somebody with no direct ties to the school. You don't owe anybody favors. Then to move on. Section 36, which is number 26 of the BELA Act, says that loans, leases, and overdraft agreements that the school may not enter into these for the purpose of supplementing school funds without the written approval of the head of department. Of course, you can enter into leases for your photocopier, etc., and you've got to check that it's the best possible deal. But you can't enter into any such agreement if it is about getting money into the school fund. The use of the property, even there, leasing has a limit. If it's a long-term lease, or if you're going to alter or convert, then you have to get the permission of the governing of the head of department. But for under 12 months, no. So significant changes to the property, altering, converting rooms, etc., that is important, because any alteration, of course, there must be plans and the like in place. But long-term leases, not on. Section 38 of SASSA. Now we know that Section 38 is about certain schools being able to pay teachers for additional work at schools. Now, first of all, in the budget, schools must distribute the budget and an explanatory document to parents using the school's communication channels. Now, this is just for the school budget, but if it's Section 38A, then it is about payments. That is part of the budget that must be clearly displayed. A difference that comes in is changes to an approved budget. We know that in any organization, any business dealing with money, sometimes you budget X, and then you find you don't use that, but you need more money in another place. That's called virement. You can change it. Yeah, the department is now saying, if this changes more than 10%, then the parents must be brought in on the picture again. Within 14 days, they must be informed of the intention to do this. Still talking about the school budget. A minimum of 10% forms the quorum that is required to pass a budget, 10% of the parent community. But if 10% isn't met, a second meeting is convened within 14 days, and it does not have a quorum. So the aim of a quorum is to ensure that there's a minimum number of people there, big enough to be representative, but not small enough so that 5 or 6 people make all the decisions at the school. Then, of course, talking about the financial records and statements at the school. First of all, record keeping. The governing body is given the oversight role to maintain detailed records of all investments, donations, funds received, funds spent, assets, liabilities, etc. We know that the governing body doesn't physically do this work. This work is done by somebody at the school. They have the oversight role, and they must see the records, and they must be familiar with the records. Annual financial statements, the governing body must prepare these. Of course, when it says the governing body, they have the responsibility to see that these are prepared within 3 months after the end of the financial year. Now, at another place, we will say to you that they must be submitted within 6 months. So 3 months to start the audit, so to speak. The financial records and statements must be presented at a general meeting of the parents. Now, most schools would do this to say, this is our state of affairs. This is why we need an increase in school fees. That is, if you charge school fees. And, of course, the parents must be given an opportunity, even if they were not at the meeting, to come into the school to inspect these statements. I'm still talking about financial records and statements. The amendment to Section 43 of SASSA indicates that the head of department has certain investigation authority to allow qualified officers to investigate the financial matters of a public school, and that they have the right to access certain documents. Now, this is important because it is important that somebody holds the school to account. The school cannot be a law unto itself. the head of department can request the Auditor General to audit the school's financial records if they think something is wrong. And even so, appoint forensic auditors to investigate if they think that money is being misappropriated and so on. So these are all within the ambit of the head of department's authority. But also the governing body must submit quarterly reports, quarterly, I'm restating, on all income and expenditure within 30 days after each quarter to the department, and of course the annual financial statements that have been either audited or examined within 6 months after the end of the financial year. Now remember, within 3 months you must start the process, but within 6 months you must submit to the department. Now, the duty of schools to provide information. Now, we all know that schools do provide information to various parts of the department. We know about EMIS, stats, and the like. So, the duty to provide information, schools have to, when requested by the head of department or the Director General of Basic Education, in consultation with the head of department of the province, provide information to the department. So if a parent or any other person applies for admission to a public school or requests exemption from school fees and provides incorrect information, misleading information, forges where they live, claims the document is true when they know it's a forgery, that is breaking the law. And they can face imprisonment of up to 12 months. And we know it's a major problem, particularly when people want to access a particular school. Please don't make yourself guilty of any wrongdoing. Then, of course, this is an important one about state liability, or rather where the state is saying it is not liable. The state is not responsible for any damage or loss that occurs as a result of activities related to any enterprise or business run by a school to supplement its resources, including practical education activities connected to that business. That is not the school directly, it's in addition to. And of course, non-compliance with the requirements outlined in section 36.2, which is in slide 9. That is the submission of documentation around finances to the department. Now, if you haven't done that, it is an infringement, but the state is saying, we are not going to be held liable for the things you do simply because it's at a school. Then, of course, the issue of learner pregnancies. This is a major crisis within South Africa, and it's a great pity that we constantly have to remind people that the children have a right to education. The fact that certain mistakes were made, it can't only be borne by the girl child. The boy, who may be even a scholar themselves, very often does not have to face the same consequences. So, the new regulations deal with the management of the pregnancy, the admission of learners to public schools, the prohibition of unauthorized payments or financial benefits to certain employees, the minimum standard for provincial education departments and district education development centers. We also have new regulations around the National Education Information System, EMIS. So these are important changes. Now, we've only just named them without going into detail. But there are also offenses and penalties. Regulations may state that anyone who violates them or fails to comply can be charged. And we've dealt with 2 of these already. But also that Parliament, regulations regarding learner pregnancy and admissions must be presented in Parliament before they are published in a gazette. So there's a lot of changes that have come about, but these are changes where the system is being held to account for the things that happen. Now, remember that the title of the Act is the Basic Education Laws Amendment Act. So it deals with more than SASA, it also deals with the EEA. And the EEA is changed, the Employment of Education Act is changed under Section 1 to update the definition of an educator. The term educator is redefined to include anyone who teaches, educates, provides professional education services, including therapy, etc., at a public school. So it's important that everybody that is busy with education is seen as an educator. We make a distinction between an educator and a teacher at times with the more narrower definition. Then, of course, the Provincial Department of Education definition is also changed, and the definition of an adult basic education center is removed from the EEA completely. Section 8 of the EEA is also amended by Clause 44 of the BELA, where a new subsection has been included that makes recommendations for transfers must be made within 2 months of the governing body being requested to provide them. If no now this is the transfer of educators. Let me be very clear. So if you have been asked to make a recommendation and no recommendation is forthcoming within 2 months, the head of department can proceed to transfer somebody to the school without a recommendation. But remember, it is the governing body who is entitled to make a decision, but they have to make it within 2 months. There's a new subsection. If an educator has received a bursary from the employer to pursue an approved course, the employer may transfer that educator with their consent to any suitable position at a public school. This brings us to the end of the BELA Bill. And now the things you did not see and the things people have been making a noise about. I started it at the beginning and I said to you, you haven't seen that before and you didn't see this happen within the bill. But we know that various laws are changed by this new Education Act. There was a view expressed that the BELA is an attempt at cultural and ethnic cleansing. Where in the bill where in this act have you actually seen that? It does not show itself. We know that the mandate of a school is access, as to ensure that children have access to quality education. The purpose of the Act is to increase access to education for all South African children and also to address some of those inequalities of the past. A political party called the Act an unmitigated disaster. I cannot see where it is an unmitigated disaster. We know that the Act gives the head of department a final say over admissions and language, but nowhere does it say that it is going to remove the right of a school to have a particular language. We've heard a group say that the BELA will destroy some languages as a medium of instruction. The BELA then creates the opportunity for more languages to be languages of instruction. What it is saying is that the community, the language of the community must be considered. It can't only be the language that was formerly part of the community. And no, it's not an attack on any one language. That there will come changes is a given. But, ladies and gentlemen, NAPTOSA has embraced the bill, not because the Act, not because it's perfect, but because it's something that we can work with and something that we definitely believe improves on certain things. The few minor problems we have, we believe we can live with, but we will constantly be working at it. I hope from the side of NAPTOSA that this has been a good series of learnings and lessons in learning for you, that you are the better off for having had it. And of course, we look forward to any questions that you may have. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening.